Christian Financial in studio with us right now, making his weekly visit, talking about Prince, the death of Prince. The latest conversation with him is he didn't have a will, so who's going to inherit his fortune, which is going to be net worth between 150 and 300 million. I know it's a big gap there. They just haven't figured it out. Plus, he's got top 2, top 3 albums on Billboard right now, so there's money in itself. And then he's got all these thousands of unreleased tracks and music in his vault.
God, when they sit down and start to uncover that and start putting that out, God knows what that's going to be worth.
And you know what happens to these artists, these celebrities, when they die, their fortune and fame, especially somebody as iconic as Prince, their net worth skyrockets. So no will, but this is in Minnesota. This would be Minnesota law. And from what I understand, like half siblings are considered equal to full siblings in a case like this, in which he's got 5 of them. Is it the same thing here in Georgia?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Generally, what will happen is that if you die without a will, the state of Georgia has a will for you. So there are a couple things that people should know, right? One is that even without the will, if you're married or not married and you have joint accounts, so Steve and I have a joint account, it's going to go to Steve no matter what my will says.
I have no problem with us having a joint account.
Well, hold on for a second.
You'd seed fund it, though, right?
Yeah, I would do whatever it took.
A joint account, like a checking account.
Yeah, well, it could be a brokerage account or a checking account or a savings account.
Okay, so if you have, let's say you have 3 bank accounts, and only one of them you have a joint account, would that cover all of them because you're on one of them? No. What if you're a beneficiary on maybe a 401k or something? Would that cover any other investments you have or just that one investment?
Right. So that's outside of the will, no matter whether you have a will or you don't. Anything that has a named beneficiary, 401k, IRA, life insurance policy, will go to that named beneficiary no matter whether you have a will or you don't. So if I had a beneficiary and I left everything to Steve, but then I really had wanted to leave it to my brother,
right,
it's not going to happen. Wherever the beneficiary is on that policy or on that 401k, that's where the money's going to go.
Just realize that I'm a good person and I would give your brother some money knowing that in your heart of hearts you would have wanted to give him some.
So I'll put you on today.
So that's what happens. Thank you. You trust people, I guess. You leave it to one family member to do the right thing to spread it around. But
how does that work out most of the time?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't. You're right. So I guess anybody has to think about who you want to leave things to, what percentage of that you want to leave it to them. And you have to say, my brother, 5%, this person, 5%, wife, 80%. You have to lay it out.
All right. So, Ted, Georgia law, you said they have a will already set up for you. So if you have an account with someone else's name on it or anything, it's automatically going to them. What if it's the opposite? You don't have your fiance or your wife's name on any of those things.
You mean not a beneficiary even on your 401k? You don't have it.
Correct.
So let's just look at 2 scenarios. Okay, maybe 3. One is you have a spouse but you have no children. It's going to go to the spouse, right? And let's assume the other scenario, you have no spouse but you have children. It's going to go to the children. The challenge is if you have spouse and children, at least 1/3 has to go to the spouse, but that's it. So in this case, 1/3 would go to the spouse and 2/3 would go to the children. And that could be problematic if you want, everything to go to your spouse, because you'd assume if you're married, everything is going to go to your spouse. But in this case, if it just said Jason Bailey, individual, nobody else was on that checking account, we're a 1/3, 2/3 state if you have children. So,
and I think, Steve, it's kind of hard for you to maybe wrap your head around this conversation as a whole, because you automatically think there's good in everybody, and everybody's got the Leave It to Beaver family, but that's far from the case.
Far from the case.
First and foremost, when somebody dies, everything changes because that person is no longer in the picture to pass judgment on their actions. So now people get a taste of that greed. Greed and jealousy, axis of evil, 2 of the big game changers in life. Would you agree, Ted?
Oh, definitely. With inheritances, you see the worst in people come out.
You more than the rest of us have probably heard these stories over and over again. So you're thinking, I know, I can see it in your face. You're thinking, it's just easy. You leave it to me, I want to divvy it up. But Ted, tell them it's just not like that. You got to make sure it's on paper.
Where are you going to put the come on trademark? Who's going to get that down the road?
That's true, and I've paid dearly for it. You're right. I look at my family and my mother, and I don't know, maybe I was raised differently. I'm like, I don't want you to leave me any debt, but you definitely don't have to leave me anything. I told my mom, use the last dime you have. I'm not looking for anything.
I mean, this is the idea of having a will, is that a will sort of gives you the fair and orderly administration of your estate. It lets you say where you want your stuff to go, because believe me, the more money that's involved, and you'll see this happen with Prince's estate, the more people that come out of the woodwork. They will.
Oh, he'll have sons and daughters. A bunch of people thinking it's so. What should people,
mess.
What should people do if they don't have a will, or if they do have a will? I mean, what is the key here to making sure that your stuff goes to the right people?
Yeah, I'd be surprised, first of all, if he didn't have a will. Given that he put so much energy into changing his name into a symbol, I would be surprised if he didn't have a will.
How does he not? That would just blow my mind. I mean, have they said he doesn't, or just nobody's saying?
Well, maybe it goes onto my conspiracy theory that he's not dead.
Well, there you go.
He might have left $300 million to the Jehovah's Witnesses, too. That's possible.
Oh, possibly. Yeah.
Look, I'm all about organized religion, especially if it keeps you from killing people, because you go to church once a week or whatever it takes, whatever keeps you sane in this world. But man, whatever happened, it's 10%. These people leave everything to the church. I'm like, how about cancer, or
me,
or a person that's going to do good with it?
Well, most people, Jason, just in looking at Prince's estate, won't have the same issues, because as an individual, if he has an estate of less than $5.45 million, everyone would be okay, and that's most mortals. But for Prince, there's a 40% estate tax if he had no will, right? Or he didn't get everything set up above that amount, which means that his estate could owe over $100 million of taxes to the government, and the state of Minnesota is a lousy state to die in, because some states have inheritance taxes and some states have estate taxes. There's going to be between a 10 and 16% inheritance tax, estate tax, right, on that money.
Do we have that here in Georgia?
No, state of Georgia is a great state to die in.
All right, that's what I want to know.
You might as well die in Georgia.
Because Prince for a second. Let's talk about the state we all live in, which is Georgia. So you're saying
this is a great state to die in.
That's great. Good. I want to die here.
All right, so none of those taxes are here.
No, but for most mortals, like you're saying, Jason, look, you ought to get a will. A lot of people don't want to, but one, it basically gives you a chance to say what you want to happen to you when you get buried. Do you want to be cremated, etc.? If you have stuff, collectibles or jewelry or whatever it may be, the things that are not in a beneficiary or a name contract, or what's called to be a will substitute, you can then figure out how do you want to pass on to your heirs. And if you don't, then the state of Georgia will.
How easy is it to I don't have a will. We were just talking about that. I don't have one. How easy
There
is
are
it?
a lot of great lawyers in the city that won't charge you an arm and a leg, but it'll probably, cost somewhere between $500 to $1,500 for a basic will, unless you go on to something like LegalZoom, where you can do it a little bit cheaper, but I recommend doing it right.
Could I leave in my will to pay the lawyer that made the will when I die if I don't have the money to pay the lawyer up front?
That sounds like a George Stein question.
Yeah. Ted's like, I'm not touching that one with Oxygen Financial. Hey, what about if I wrote it down on a piece of paper and just put it in an envelope? And then it was there that I just hand wrote what I wanted to give out. Would that be enough?
The folklore says that there was a will that was once done on the back of a napkin that basically said all to Mary, and it held up in court. But for someone like Prince, and think about this even for someone like Steve, is that if you have trademarks or you have other things that may live on in perpetuity, like his content of all of his albums and his music, there are many agents out there today that will take over that, because his estate's going to make money on an ongoing basis, right? As this music comes out, as they sold 579,000 albums since he died. It was a 42,000% increase.
God,
so
these guys make more when they die than they do when they're alive.
But know how the record business works. All this music that's been published has already been bought. He doesn't own it anymore. Like the 1999 and Little Red Corvette. I would guess he doesn't own the all that music has been sold, so there's big companies that own this music that allows that music to be played on radio stations, in arenas, and then they get residual checks from that company.
He could have bought some of it back, but I don't know.
No matter how the deal works. But the music that he's kept, and because Prince was the guy that fought the system, he kept it. So now that music, then you got to figure out how you publish that music, who's going to pick it up, and then who gets the residuals from that music.
It's true, but it is a business. Look at somebody like Elvis and how they've used his name for years. Heck, they could make Purple Rain ice cream, and his family might make royalties off that ice cream for years and years. So
I'd already be on the phone to Ben and Jerry's.
Ben and Jerry's
all day long.
Just thinking that. All right.
Damn right.
Do I get credit for that one or what?
Yeah, maybe.
Ted Jenkin, Oxygen Financial. How can people find you? Can help people out if they do want to do a will.
I mean, look, if you're either inheriting money or or you have children and you're trying to figure out how to get your estate set up right, that's one of the things that we do. I've got a great guide if you're talking to your parents about 5 mistakes they shouldn't make, but especially 5 ones that you shouldn't make if you're going to set up a will.
All right, so
go to oxygenfinancial.net and we'll get you the free guide.
Oxygenfinancial.net. All right, thanks. That was good. That was interesting, yeah. Brandy, headlines, round number 2. What do you got?
We have tickets to